United States is under attack. This is 21st century, sixth-generation warfare. The megacorporations of the planet publicly have organized the UN and its World Migrant Refugee Program to actually create refugee crises and then organize them into political tools to create migration routes out of North Africa, Asia, the Middle East, and Latin America into first world nations to politically conquer them. We're about to break down the facts, the documents, the history, and how we can stop it with this critical information. But it's up to you to get it out. The story of the 10,000 plus illegal alien migrant caravan that smashed through Mexican defenses yesterday on its way to the United States begins in Europe and what they've gone through in the last 6 years. But I want everyone watching to understand something. What I'm about to break down is admitted fact from the United Nations and George Soros's Open Society Foundation. None of this is my opinion. It's shocking to me to watch mainstream media deceive the American public, but to also watch even conservatives not realize the full magnitude. The United States is under military attack. It's a 21st century war using weaponized third world populations. Let's begin. Now, a lot of people think of Europe as far away from the Middle East and far away from Africa. It's its own area of the world, the tip top of industrialization and Western civilization, the first world. But just south of it, 90 miles, in some cases only 5 miles, is North Africa. Now, the United Nations, set up by the robber barons about 75 years ago, by the multinational corporations, understands that. It understands that if they have jurisdiction over migrants or over refugees, they can use them as political weapons. And they've written many a white paper on it, a few of which I'm about to break down here in a moment. But if you look at the Middle East and you look at Central Asia, it's smack dab right here underneath Europe. And only Greece and Bulgaria and Macedonia and Albania are standing in the way. And most of those countries are now Muslim or Muslim majority, like Albania. What did Bill Clinton do back in the 1990s? Bomb Serbia repeatedly to help Al-Qaeda and to help other Islamic fighters take control of a third of Serbia. So it's part of a globalist colonization backing radical Islam across the world. And in the last 6 years, we've seen more than 15 million illegal aliens staged at UN emergency centers in North Africa and in the Middle East to then be escorted and paid to then invade Europe with socialist and globalist governments under EU control, letting them in. And they admit it's part of a plan to take over. And I'm going to show you those documents here in a moment. That's why this is so critical, because they're carrying out the same plan here. So the story of what's happening to the United States begins in the Middle East and Europe. Now, here is North America. From southern Mexico to the North Pole is North America. Central America, and then South America. Right now in Guatemala, tens of thousands have already crossed and have been stopped on the edge of Mexico. Hundreds of thousands more are being prepared in camps in Guatemala and Honduras, UN-funded camps, Ford Foundation-funded camps, George Soros-funded camps. It's all in federal documents. It's all public. But mainstream media will lie and say that's a conspiracy theory. Now I'm going to break down their overall master plan and then how we stop it here in a moment. And that's why we're so censored and so blocked, because the globalists know we actually research their source documents. But let's finish up with Europe real quick before we go to America. Here is Reuters. We have clips of it right here in the Infowars.com article. Macron walks back mass migration, tells migrants to succeed in Africa, after he said 200 million need to enter Europe in the next 20 years or so. Here's another one from a UN document in 2001. UN planned to flood America with 600 million migrants to politically divide and conquer, drive down wages, and destroy any sovereignty that nations have in a Tower of Babel type scenario. Austria, Hungary, and others are pulling out of the UN Immigration Pact, saying that they are not going to be part of this because the UN is purposely paying to bring in the refugees and to create the refugee problem, to bring in a client group that the EU, the UN, and the globalists control. So again, think about how close Africa and the Middle East is to Europe. 90 miles from Italy, only a few miles from Spain. Soros is on record funding millions of people in Zodiac boats coming across and then invading, being turned into political armies. The very same thing is now being done, just like it started 6 years ago in Europe, to the United States. The good news is we know the battle plan and can stop it. So the United Nations and multinational corporations that are promoting globalism, almost all of them, go in and exploit Venezuela, set up socialism and communism. Once it collapsed, everyone starts fleeing. And in a domino effect, only 7 nations from Venezuela up to the U.S. border, people begin to flee by the tens of millions. Just as the UN brings in policies with the IMF and World Bank that collapse North Africa and the Middle East, just like Hillary and Obama started the wars and the Arab Spring that admittedly caused the refugee crisis. The globalists go in, they help exacerbate the crises, millions begin to flee in all directions. The UN sets up refugee camps to organize, train, and pay the groups to then leapfrog nation by nation. And the UN openly tells Panama, Costa Rica, Nicaragua, Honduras, and Guatemala, if you simply let our people have passage, we won't leave them here. We're sending them to the U.S. And now, in just the last year, millions are migrating all the way up to the Guatemalan border, where the UN has been called in by Mexico to fix the problem that the UN itself set up on record, to then set up a refugee camps or a group of camps over the Mexican border to ensure that they don't stay in Mexico, but instead are given transit up to the United States. This is the political plan to capture this nation. It's been done before, and they admit it's their plan. Think about the incredible deception of CNN. When tens of thousands of illegal aliens, UN funded, smashed over the Guatemalan border yesterday, they said, oh, there was chaos at the migrant march. No, they attacked the police. They tore down the fences. They rampaged over, and they used children as shields. And then, when other smaller groups have gotten up to the border, they claim that we're taking children away from these people to find out who they really are. And in the famous case of Trump standing over a little girl, it wasn't even true. So they bring these children into this dangerous situation. The UN funds it, and the UN sets up their bases, ensuring the next country that we won't let them stay here, give in to us, and we promise to ship them into the United States, into Europe, into the heart of the political systems they want to control. This is the reverse of colonialism and is a corporate form of colonialism using weaponized third world populations to take over the planet. Now, in part 2 of this breakdown, we're going to go into the studio, and I'm going to lay out how we stop it, how President Trump stops it. But the first thing we've got to do as modern Paul Revere's is raise the alarm. We care about third world populations, and we hope they reform their nations. But the very globalists that have imploded their nations are using the crises they've helped create to now literally foment these giant migrant waves to form huge migration routes, literal railroads into the West, just like they've done Europe. This is the plan, the official UN plan, 600 million people they plan in the next 30 years to bring into the United States and totally and completely conquer the nation. Because that's how you control people, is through divide and conquer. Bring in people, keep them poor, keep them dumb, set them up under socialism, and then if you don't like what the domestic population has done, you can trigger the population you brought in to absolutely burn the nation down. That's the globalist plan. This is 21st century warfare, and America is under attack. Now we've got to talk about how we stop it. All right, I said 2 minutes. And we are live, ladies and gentlemen. It is October 20th, 2018 on this Saturday global transmission. I am Alex Jones, your host. I literally just shot that report minutes ago in the other studio. Now we're live to break down the solutions. Now, first off, we're going to talk about solutions, but I'm begging viewers and listeners to understand something. Everything I just laid out is posted in articles written by Jamie White, Paul Joseph Watson, Kit Daniels, and others on Infowars.com with links to the UN, to Reuters, to AP, admitting that the UN is running the refugee centers, that the UN with NGOs, non-governmental organizations, is organizing the third world populations to then bring them in to Europe and the United States. So if you're part of the few, the proud, the patriots that despite all the censorship and manipulation are watching, please go to Infowars.com with the article you just put on screen and email this and call your friends and family and text them the link. This is important. You are the Paul Revere's. Without you, we're nothing. You are the InfoWar. So put it back on screen, please, because I need viewers to go to Infowars.com and get Watch Live, UN-funded caravan, a Trojan horse for 600 million migrant invasion of U.S., United States now under UN military attack. Now, again, one of the biggest forms of war that the Huns would use and the Mongols would use and the Romans would use when Caesar took over Gaul, took him 8 years, he wrote a series of letters to Rome that were put into a book called The Battle for Gaul, that he would force out giant populations and drive them into other areas, causing conflict and crisis. That's part of how they would conquer. So the UN is this private corporate world government set up in 1946 by David Rockefeller on record, and it wants world government, and it's been exploiting the third world and controlling them. The UN has slave camps, exterminates people for their land, you name it, literally has huge staffs of people paid like 30 cents a day in Africa and Latin America to cut the grass with scissors. They don't even give them lawnmowers. They have scissors. UN sex trafficking, all of it. The IMF, the World Bank, they go in and rape these countries. And then they hype them full of hate of America and Europe. And then they have UN refugee centers always set up on the border countries where the UN comes in and pays them to set up these refugee centers and say the UN's going to help you get to Europe, get to America. And then the media hypes it up and says it's good and says there's all these freebies in America, in Europe, in Russia, in Japan. And they bring them in mass up to the border. And then they actually organize them to begin the invasion. And so they've leapfrogged all the way from Venezuela and other countries collapsing in South America up to Guatemala and tore down the first Mexican defenses and are now at the international bridge pouring across there, and they're now swimming across en masse. People say, well, we won't put up with this. We already have 35 million illegal aliens in this country, it's estimated. And again, once they get here, they're mailed voter registration cards. They're mailed absentee ballots. They're all voting. It's here. So this is a true existential threat, and this is how 21st century warfare operates. So to defeat it, you have to go learn the Kalargi plan, which became the UN plan. And Hitler had a plan to actually take over the world by merging the Nazis with Islam and using Islam to take over Africa and Asia, because there are already large Islamic populations in Africa and in Asia, and using the Kalergi plan that had come up decades before he came to power from Austrian royalty. I'm not kidding. Look this up. This is Encyclopedia Britannica stuff, folks. And it's just insane. So it's a wedding of European fascism with radical Islam. And so that's why they tell Muslims, you'll get women, you'll get free everything, you'll get free housing, you'll get it all, just come to Europe. And they get it when they do, because they're using outside groups who are having on average 6 children, Europeans have on average 1.2 children, to come in and conquer them. And Macron said in the next 20 years, he wants 200 million Muslim Africans. They already got millions in France, to come in and be the new France, because then it's a political group they control that vote as a monolithic organization. He had to walk that back a few months ago, but then last week he came out and said French women should not have children if they're educated. You are not the future, Africa is. Well, I love Africa, but don't say French women aren't the future, don't have children. Type that in. French women backlash to Macron saying educated women don't have big families. And I have more articles of Democrats saying stay-at-home moms are bad, don't have kids. Oh, but have folks in Latin America have 6, 7 kids, bring them on in. So they bring in the groups, they fund them, the Big Ford Foundation, the Rockefeller Foundation, the Carnegie Foundation. These are the groups in mainstream articles. The Open Society Foundation of George Soros, they bring them in, they stage them. And then they begin marching them to the next nation to build, and then they tell Guatemala, Honduras, we won't keep them here if you aid us setting up refugee camps up against the Mexican border. So they bow to this. Then it collapses into Mexico, and the migration routes are opened up, and everybody gets the idea, oh, you'll get your free welfare, you'll get your anchor baby. Doesn't matter, the average journey costs $7,000. There's video of the NGOs of the UN paying them. And Snopes is the top story, openly funded by Soros again, saying, oh, Congressman Gates is wrong. They're not joining the caravan and being paid. Yeah, the video shows them being paid. Pull up Trump's tweet, please. Yeah, the video shows them being paid in Guatemala. Yeah, well, we're going to play this in a minute with audio. But they were already part of the caravan and get paid on each step. So they play these weird semantical games to say I'm wrong or Trump's wrong or Gates is wrong. This is what's going on. But as I showed you in the earlier video, don't believe me, just even with the censored Google search engine, type in Macron, 200 million migrants from Africa. You'll get Reuters, AP, and the video in French. Type in UN plan 600 million to come to the U.S. And then Snopes said InfoWars and Paul Watson are false. PolitiFact. And then you read it says, yeah, they say 600 million, but that was 2001, a UN plan that never got implemented. Go read the article. July, I always know what's on target because they say it's false. They tell you water's not wet, you know, all this other, the sky isn't blue. And you click on the article, look at July 24th InfoWars story, and you read this article, they admit it's a real UN document and it's happening. And I've got Macron and I've got Merkel on video saying the exact same crap. But they think you won't go look it up. They think you're an idiot. So what do we do to stop this? You realize whether you're white or Hispanic or old or young or black, doesn't matter. You believe in America. You believe in free market. It'd be one thing if we had hundreds of millions of migrants coming this way and they weren't going to have chips put on their shoulders and organized a vote for socialism and globalism. They're going to turn America into Venezuela. So it's illegal. You get searched at the TSA. I think they go too far. You get checked when you fly in from Europe. That's constitutional. They can do it when you're crossing a national border. I think it goes too far on citizens. But the government's only training you to be a slave. Trump's trying to make it easier for citizens to come and go. But when you come across in mass and tens of thousands pour across, and you see Reuters and AP and CNN and the New York Times saying 200 women and children, that's the headline everywhere. See it for yourself. 200, several hundred women and children innocently tried to get food, and they came across from Honduras. No, they're really from Venezuela mainly. And they got beat up by Mexican police. The real footage, it's still going on, is bottles and knives and police being stabbed and Molotov cocktails being thrown. And then they literally walk up with kids in a phalanx. That's a V of formation attack. And the third world police of Mexico are overwhelmed, and they ram them down and beat them with clubs. There's even the New York Times even has articles with the Mexican police cut and bleeding, and they'll hold up. There's video in the New York Times article. They lie and spin it, but then they actually show a few photos of a woman holding her 2-year-old daughter up as men attack with clubs, and the Mexican police don't know what to do. They're not going to attack the woman and child. And so they're like, and they're being hit while a woman comes forward with a baby with men attacking on her sides. So instead of it being a Spartan 300, the best guy they've got up front with his shield and a phalanx, it is literally women bringing children forward so that they can attack the police. I mean, that is like the Islamicists with children as suicide bombers. That's one photo, but there's one where it's like there's a V attack formation and you see a bottle being thrown at police and the woman's holding the child up to the police and they're just like, I mean, they're being trained in the UN camps how to do this. CBS News, document cam shot, please. Hundreds of migrants. No, I mean, it's probably 50,000. It looks like an NFL game letting out. I mean, well, let's just say 10,000. Mexico estimates 20,000. Because, by the way, it's not just the big group that first came through. It's more and more piling up. It's only the folks that are really political and been brainwashed in the UN camps that are ready to go. Hundreds of migrants in U.S. bound caravan cross Mexico-Guatemala border. CBS News. And then there's all these CNN articles. Innocent children attacked by Mexican police. Honduras, Guatemala leaders to meet on migrant caravan. It's a UN invasion force climbing over, beating people up. Again, pull up the CNN headlines. It's everywhere. Oh, chaos. Oh, police tear gas innocent people. Read it all for yourself, ladies. Meanwhile, Canada eyes euthanasia for children. Oh, and without parental consent. Well, that's liberal. AZ Democrat says stay-at-home moms, they're nothing but leeches. You pull up Macron telling French women don't have children. Pelosi says if they attack or demonize or lie about conservatives, it's okay. It's collateral damage. This is the traitors. These are the people funded by the big mega banks that are willing to do anything. Now, what do? We call Congress. We call talk radio. You go see your congressmen and women that are now back in their districts with 16 days out to this critical midterm election, and you go talk to them. Because notice, they had smaller caravans they organized in Mexico and with Islamic groups and a few hundred people here and there. And they just got us used to it. And, if ICE stops, 1,000 people coming across, it's racist. And if there's an unattended child, just let them be picked up by some Democrat group in a bus without any ID and disappeared, which it turned out Obama was running sex trafficking. In fact, even the Washington Post, type in, Washington Post, even 3 years ago, had to admit that children who came across the border under Obama program were picked up and used in sex slavery, were used in sex trafficking. So imagine thousands coming across at any one time. Now it's tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands. There it is. Obama administration placed children with human traffickers. Report says they didn't place them. They're saying if Border Patrol or police or state police even, they're saying 75%, over 75% are unattended. You're talking about, in some cases, 10, 12, 13-year-olds who are with no one. And if you even ask for ID, you're bad. You're just here. Here's a bus of traffickers. The Democrats say they're good. Bye-bye, little girl. They placed thousands with pimps. Who's in that group? Who's sneaking drugs across? Who's bringing weapons across? We don't know. It's like a door on your house. And they show the famous Time magazine thing of Trump over the little girl who was never separated from her mother, who makes funny trips every year or so across the border and brings her daughter as a shield because then no one will bust her or stop her because she's with a child. And her own husband said, she's a criminal and she's evil and she needs to stop. She's abusing our daughter. Her daughter hadn't eaten in a day. She'd come across 100 miles of desert with coyotes who rape 80% of the women, Amnesty International reports. She was the evil person. Trump wasn't there. He didn't stop her. They just let her get away with it because she had a baby using our Western chivalry. And they just let them in. And she'll do it again. Whatever it is she's carrying across the border, she's so damn evil that she's made trip after trip after trip. She's been picked up over and over again, coming in. But it's okay, because she's got her daughter, like a human shield, just like the Migrant UN-funded group, going, here's my daughter. And then ICE says, we need to find out people have IDs and these kids are theirs. They could be trafficking kids. And the Democrats say, no! When people bring in children, including men with a bunch of teenage girls, you don't stop them, you racist. You let them load on our Catholic charity buses and ship them into Houston, where they're going to have up to 20 men a day anally rape the living hell out of them, because we're liberals and little girls make a lot of cash. And you're not going to hear a damn thing out of the Me Too movement. You know, I can't tell you what I was told by the military and by the FBI when I began to covering the human trafficking a few years ago, but I was given briefings. They told me who was involved, what was going on. Let me tell you something. They are bringing kids in that they're not just having sex with. You know, there's a big market with the devil worshippers in killing a child. You're talking a couple $100,000. And let me tell you, just like in the ancient black magic rituals, they torture those babies for hours. They slice them, they cut them, the women drink the blood, and they torture them, and they beg for mommy, and they suck their soul, and then they cut their heart out and they eat it. MS-13 sacrifices children. That's all admitted. This is pure Satanism, ladies and gentlemen, and it is absolutely collapsing nations, with tens of thousands a day already coming across, and now hundreds of thousands in giant armies marching forward. And again, the UN says, oh, Mexico, we won't flood you with this. We'll fix it and stop it. We're running it. We're organizing it with these dozens of globalist foundations. Soros is only a part of it. Carnegie Foundation, Ford Foundation, Rockefeller Foundation. I've got articles with the federal listings, the millions they spend doing it. They bring them up to your border. They're smuggling the kids in. Hillary's been caught. Her aides have been caught. All of it. They bring these poor kids in and say, let these kids in unvetted. Sometimes you'll have one adult with 5 or 6, 7 kids. You're like, oh my God, you're with kids. Let's just let you in to disappear. They use the kids to get past. The vampires say, look, I got a kid, let me in. They just hand them off. They get their money. Who knows where those kids go, see? I know, snuff films, sex slavery. A lot of times they just live with Democrats. They put them on welfare, give them a new identity, live off of them. It's all literally modern slavery on the welfare system, where most Democrats I personally know have 5 or 6 Latin Americans they live off of and they skim their checks off of. And they've got them working as janitors in restaurants. They're working. But there's somebody above them who controls them with liberal immigration lawyers that are sucking half their money off. They got welfare. The lawyers keep it, the Democrats keep it, and then they work in a job and live in some cockroach-infested place, if they're lucky and aren't in sex slavery. So this is why they want me shut down, because we're telling you the reality. This is what's going on. They busted the mayor's family in Austin a decade ago with slaves in a basement chained up because they get their family in, they won't pay all the money they want, so they torture them. I mean, where I live, this goes on. This is the big business, feeding on the desperate humanity instead of fixing these countries. So what do you do about this? You get pissed and you realize what it is, that they bring these children up as human shields. They collapse it. The UN organizes it. Document cam shot, please. Here is South America. Here is Central America, Mexico. Okay, Florida. We're right here up here in Texas. We're in Austin right here. Okay. And here's Venezuela that's totally collapsed. Millions are coming in all over. IMF, World Bank, totally exploiting these people. Bankrupted their currencies like they're about to do the U.S. Globalists want them. It's all coming just like out of Africa, just out of like the Middle East. And it's right here in Mexico. It has strong border controls because they get that as bad as Mexico is, it's even worse down here. Okay, so this is all going on. They're coming up through Central America. They're coming up here through Mexico. My drawing isn't that best. And they're telling them, you let us set up refugee centers, we'll leave you alone. And that means we'll control them and only send them up the rail lines into Texas and California and everywhere else. And they did the same thing in Europe. Draw another picture. Again, this will be the Mediterranean. I'm not the best, but I'll do my best drawing for you. So you got Spain and Portugal here. Got Africa. Got Israel. Got Syria. Got Turkey. Got Iraq. Got Iran. Got Saudi Arabia. Got it all right here. Okay, got the water down here. And again, here's the Mediterranean. And all they're doing is setting up refugee camps in Spain. And over here in Macedonia and Albania, which is Muslim. And it's just boom, 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 and boom, 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 boom. And giant migrant waves out of the Middle East just slammed into Syria, UN funded, and tried to take it over and have a civil war. And then you got Turkey right here. They have a total invasion point right into Europe. All right? And the UN says that's their plan for global domination. They don't send in armies. They send in women and children at the front, 90+% military-aged men. They come in. They're organized as Democrats. They're organized as socialists. And they politically, then illegally vote, and they take you over, period. I didn't touch anything in there. Well, whatever. We got it going here. We're live. We're going live here. This is 21st century military attack. That's what it is. It's using women and children. The UN and multinational corporations come in. They want to drive down wages. They want political groups they can control. And they exploit countries and then move them the next domino forward. And you see all the corporate media that's censoring real American patriot news and lying about our president who recognizes his threat. You see them saying, we're all racist, we're all Nazis, we're all demons, we shouldn't be on air. And you see them saying, oh, a couple hundred women and children tried to come up and the police beat them up. But you saw the tens of thousands. You saw, show the caravans in Europe, the giant snakes of millions of people coming in. We're going to end this broadcast, we have it, with Trump's the snake video, which is one of the reasons we got banned off Twitter. This is the reality, and they're using these poor people, and it's getting worse. All right. I'm going to stop right there. People ask me, hey, you've been censored, the first guy, off of over 100 platforms. They're coming after your credit card processing to shut down InfoWarsStore.com. How are you taking it? I'm not even thinking that I'm under attack. I'm just a soldier, a patriot, a loyal person that loves America and our history and knows we're the best, most powerful, informative, human empowering system in the world. Doesn't mean we don't have problems, but we've been really trying for something great. And my family's been involved in the founding of the colonies and the founding of the Republic and the founding of Texas, really at the heart of it, working with President Jackson, and I'm proud of that on both sides. And I'm not just saying that. It's about destiny. And the globalists think I'm a schmuck because they really care about humanity. They think you're idiots. But I believe in you, and I've bet on you. And this is the big fight now. And everything my ancestors did, believing in what was right, laying down their lives, standing up, was not even a sacrifice. Because they knew if you lose humanity, you lose the whole game. They did it because they live on through me and you. And your ancestors, if you love liberty, are the same people. Whether you're black, white, old, young, if you love liberty and you resonate with this, you're part of God's people. And we're not going to give up on this long war. We're winning. And the good news is, in closing, in South America and in Asia and in Africa and in Europe and in Eastern Europe and in Central Europe and in all over the world, people are waking up to global corporations, world government, how they're playing us off against each other, the giant sucking sound, the race to the bottom. And in Brazil, the Donald Trump pro-gun liberty guy already tried to kill him, stabbed him a few months ago. He's set to win, just won the primaries, just won the first round. Everywhere it's happening. And the UN's threatening to militarily, with the EU, invade Italy after they took 3 million illegal aliens who were burning and murdering and raping. They said enough, so they're threatening to invade them. And so everywhere it is happening, ladies and gentlemen, everywhere the globalists are having real problems, because once we're awake, we win. They thought we were intimidated. No, we were asleep. So you have to realize this is 21st century warfare. You have to realize, pull up an old image, to type into a Bing, because Google doesn't work anymore. Maybe they haven't censored old medieval paintings, but type in images of sieges of castles. Sieges of castles. People running down walls, blowing up towers, knocking out gates, climbing over walls. I mean, that's what this is. And it's the UN directing it to bring in groups they totally control. And listen, I know you as viewers know that. But it's not, oh, poor migrants wanting a better life, oh, poor dears. They're being organized and now coming up to Mexico saying, we'll flood you and destroy you unless you capitulate, and we'll set up a refugee center over your border from Guatemala, which we will then get it all legalized to bring in. Trump last year, now other countries. Hell, pull up Lord of the Rings, siege of, I'm not a big, I like Lord of the Rings, but I'm not a huge watcher of it in years. It's like in Lord of the Rings. It's not the later one, it's the first one where they attack, I forget the names of the places. It's the Lord of the Rings, Siege of Helm's Deep. Pull that up. And so that's what this is. This is classic warfare. In the most ancient warfare, you would just tell your people, we're marching on the, and then you would have the troops in the front, but the women and the children behind. And then you just come in and take over, and then kill the men and take the women and children into slavery. This is putting women up front as the phalanx with the UN bringing in their client groups. So again, upload it to YouTube, upload it to Twitter, upload it to Facebook. Take this emergency warning. Send the email out. As soon as we're not live anymore, it'll be archived at Infowars.com, and the article posted that Jamie White put up, we'll put on screen, so you can send it forward to Congress and everyone else, because this is it. They get you normalized with 35 million coming across slowly. And, you know, the other caravans of 1,000 here, 1,000 there. Now it's 50 times bigger, 100 times bigger. It's exponential. This is the attack. Just go to YouTube and say, Siege of Helm's Deep. Watch live, UN-funded caravan of Trojan horse for 600 million migrant invasion of U.S. That's the UN saying that. They just picked a wild number. Let's say it's 100 million. It's still insane. United States now under UN military attack. And that's what this is. Imagine if you said, let's put 10,000 homeless people from New York City. They got more than that. Search engine, estimated number of homeless in New York. I bet it's 50,000. Estimated number of, let's put 10,000 illegal aliens in the Rockefeller-funded United Nations. They would say, hell no, we have security. Hell, let's put 5 illegal aliens in every Hollywood person's house. They're going to say, hell no. The Vatican has 200-foot walls. They say Europe should open itself to the Islamic invasion and that they're sick of Christians and all the rest of it. I said 50,000, 62,000. So let's house 10,000 at the UN. I read an article like 5 years ago, they had 50,000 homeless. Photographic memory still doesn't work all the time anymore, I'm old. It's freeing me, though. Like back when I had a totally photographic memory until about 35, I just knew everything that I ever seen. I could pull it up. It was like I tried to go, because I just had too much. Now it's kind of like, yeah, well. But getting back to what I was saying, imagine J.K. Rowling that said Donald Trump's a scumbag, Paul Watson's a scumbag, I'm a scumbag because we don't want open borders. She has giant palaces, 5 of them in England alone. She has them in Tasmania, Australia, Western Europe. She has more than 15 houses, last time I checked. 5 or 6 of them in England. Some of them have 30, 40 bedrooms, just huge former royal palaces. She's worth over $1 billion. She hasn't taken one in her house. And Bono, who's part of funding these open borders, he has Charities for Africa and keeps 99% of the money for his evil self. These people are monsters. I like it. So
Your friends are with you, Aragorn.
That's right, play this.
Let's hope they last the night.
Classic invasion. Again, walls, gates. No controls, though, for foreigners. No controls for criminals. No controls with people, sometimes a one woman, one man with 6, 7 children. And they just go, children are mine. They're loaded on buses. Even the Washington Post admits, and some of as young as 5 end up in sex slavery. It's okay because it's liberal. It's okay because you're bad and you're a racist, but we want your country right now, and we want what you've got, which is civilization. Oh, but CNN called this a little chaos on the Mexico border. They just overrun and tore down the fences and attacked people with clubs and weapons. And they covered it up in our media. But that's okay. Because George Soros cares about you. You know, I read the New York Times over a decade ago that the UN literally, they even admitted in there, and hiding in plain view, that if they want a carbon sink area or they're taking some tribe's land, they send in UN troops and just murder everyone. But that's because it's the UN, it's okay. Because they have every movie star and every so-called, fashion model saying, I love UNICEF, I love the UN. Who runs the blood diamonds.
Shall I describe it to you? Or would you like me to find you a box?
Yeah, type in Bono gives less than 1% to charity. Raises billions and then steals it. And now they want us, but see, here we don't do that because the orcs hold up babies. Soros holds up babies and says, let me in. You're going to do what I say. You're going to let me do whatever I want. Everybody else has got to show a credit card or a license to buy something or to get on an airplane, but not us. We're coming in, and you're going to pay for everything, and we're going to get in the mail voting. And, the left will probably spin this and say, oh, my God, he compares migrants to orcs. No, the third world evil, the corruption, Soros, that's what it is. And it's coming. And the gates are open. And Trump's just trying to do something, and he's the bad guy. He's the person that has to be stopped. And I'm the person that has to be stopped because we would dare do anything about this and actually try to help the third world. They have incredible resources. They have everything. They just need good leaders. They need a free market. But see, we don't do this. CNN tells us, a couple hundred women and children. Nothing's going on. It's all right. Yeah, nothing's happening. As the UN opens up the migration routes to do this and take over. Yeah, click on the Daily Mail and see it from them. It's Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, who Macron was speaking at last week when he said French women shouldn't have children. Show that article and click on the link. I want you to read the Daily Mail. He said, don't have any children because whites are bad. And we're not white supremacists. We're just like, why are whites bad? There you go. These are monsters. But there's a WorldNet Daily article off of the federal documents that list all the places that fund it. And it shows how the UN runs the Bono Foundation and how they're running it. Let me find it. Here it is. Here it is. WorldNet Daily, Border Caravan, call it the George Soros Express. That's the article right there. Zoom in on that. Yeah, it's looping. We're good. All right, that's it for this live transmission. You want to stand up for the children being sex trafficked over this? That's how they get them through. Hillary's been caught bringing in hundreds and hundreds of kids out of Haiti. Many of them disappear. Her own people get indicted, get arrested. They change their names and are back running children's charities. You want to wake up to these vampires, these monsters, and help people all over the world, from Africa to Latin America to Europe to Asia, then do the right thing. Hillary funded the Arab Spring with Obama that killed 1 million plus people, hundreds of thousands displaced, and thousands of little kids in sex slavery. That's the reality. And that's the UN globalist invasion of America and the world. Go to Infowars.com. We're going to end this live feed. Get the archive of this and email it to everyone you know. Personally tell folks about it. If you don't, no one will. I know there's a lot of shows, a lot of media, and a lot of stuff. We've been shut down first and most because we're on target. And the power of you, the tens of thousands that are watching this live emergency show, all of you calling friends and family, all of you taking the link at Infowars.com and texting it and saying, look at the real UN invasion, look at the sex trafficking, look at what's happening, and telling people, send that email on, send that text message on. That's how we do it, but it's in your hands. I have no power without you. I am in your hands.